The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to St. Louis in Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. We are going to be talking to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Jennings, who's the divisional commander of the Salvation Army. And Dan, welcome to In Tune.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be on the program today, and just thank you for your interest in the Salvation Army.
Now, tell us, the Salvation Army has a very historic background. Give us a little background of the St. Louis, because one of the reasons I wanted to have you guys on, not only because of your response with what's going on now, but and you have to correct me. Is it 140 years this year? I've read two different things, or is it next year?
Wow. Well, the Salvation Army is 155 years old, 140 years in St. Louis. In fact, St. Louis, for a time, was the national headquarters for the United States.
Look at that. That's great.
There's another first, folks, for our area.
I know.
That seems to get obscurely lost in history. But the Salvation Army has, got its founding in England, correct? And then kind of traveled across the pond here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the founder.
Right. So William Booth founded the Salvation Army, and he was a Methodist minister. And when he founded the Salvation Army, the primary purpose was for evangelism. He was an evangelist at heart. He served for some time in the Methodist Church on the East End of London, among the poorest of the poor, and really found a calling to them. In fact, when he went home one night, he said to his wife, he says, "I have found my destiny, and it's on the East End of London." And every once in a while, amazing things will happen, and you just say, that's what the Lord's called me to. That's my mission. And one of the things that was happening at that time in London was a thing called fuzzy jaw, an odd disease, but it would rot the jawbone of the people who made matches. And the Salvation Army thought we've got to do something about this. And in fact, one of the early kind of social ministries the Salvation Army did is they started a match factory and made non-phosphorus matches, which eradicated fuzzy jaw through the East End of London.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Now, we normally I think most people in St. Louis, when they think about the Salvation Army, they will probably think about the Red Kettle. They may think about some rehabilitation services, but there's a whole lot more that goes into that. You guys are homelessness, food assistance, volunteering, rent and utility assistance. There was one I had even thought about was where is it here? Finding people that are missing persons.
Oh my.
Yeah, we had a missing persons bureau in Chicago. That is not as active anymore because of Google. But in the last couple of decades, if you were looking for someone before the age of the internet, the Salvation Army had a service where we would actually track people down. We'd make all the calls, figure out where people were, and try to reunite them. It was a great thing to do, but that's almost gone now because it's so easy to find people just by looking at Facebook or Instagram or typing their name into a Google search.
Now, if people think about the St. Louis area, this is the Midland region, is that correct? Is that how that's pronounced? Midland Division?
Yeah, Midland Division covers all of the state of Missouri except for Kansas City, and it covers what we call southern Illinois. So anything from Quincy, Illinois, all the way down to the southern border where Indiana and Kentucky come together. We cover that area.
What are some of the? Yeah, it's a huge area that's an undertaking there. We're talking about also human trafficking. We're talking about you have youth camps. In the St. Louis area, what would we recognize? One of the reasons I wanted to call you up is because on top of and I don't remember what the name of the building is, it's the old Robert E. Lee Hotel. You have the sign that says serving St. Louis since 1880.
Yeah, we call that the Railton Residence, and it's had many purposes over the years. But about 10 years ago, we had a vision to turn that into something totally different. So rather than being a homeless shelter, we turned that into permanent, low-cost housing for people who wanted to work downtown but couldn't find anything that was affordable to live in. So that's a fixed rent, low-income, one-bedroom apartment that people can live in. And it's in high demand. It's for people who are low income and something that is reasonable for them to be able to live right downtown where they work and be able to have a place that's nice and they can have dignity and make it their own place.
Now, give the kind of a background on Harbor Light. And I always have heard those words. And when I was doing some studying and some history for the show today, that started as a substance abuse program. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. And it differs from some of our other substance abuse programs in that it has a detox portion, and then you go into a residential treatment center to get off of drugs and alcohol. In the earliest days, it was primarily for people who were alcoholics who wanted to get sober. But in today's world, it is probably 2-to-1 drug addiction over alcohol abuse.
Wow. Now, you guys, like you said, you cover the entire state. I'm looking at the map here where you are. You're Springfield, you're down in Joplin, Branson, Sedalia, Columbia, looks like up Kirksville, Hannibal, on the southern Illinois side, in Alton, is that Quincy? And also in O'Fallon, Missouri, down in Arnold, Missouri, Marion, Illinois. Just unbelievable, Jeff City. This is just not the thrift stores either that we're talking about, folks, because that's another thing I think people would see. You know, the Red Kettle would see the thrift store, maybe see the Shield, the Red Shield every once in a while. Get into some specifics, if you don't mind, Dan, about some of these other maybe unseen kind of things that you guys are doing. I know in disasters, you know, you see the Red Cross and you see the Salvation Army out there.
Sure.
But talk about some of the other things that people may not see that you guys are really actively on the front lines working with.
Well, here are just a couple things that we do that are unusual, that are not in the public eye as much. For example, in Ferguson, we have a clinic that operates there. And what we did is we discovered the emergency rooms that were being used as a primary care physician. So people were going in for routine illnesses or waiting until it was catastrophic to go in. They had no primary doctor. No one ever saw them as a routine visit. So they'd wait till it was catastrophic and go to the emergency room to be treated. So we partnered with the local hospital there and said, let's set up a doctor's office, a clinic right in our building so that people can come at no cost, get treatment, see a medical worker. And the goal was, let's see 100 people over the course of the year, and let's try to reduce by about 80% the number of people that are going to the emergency room for non-emergency visits or until it builds up until an emergency visit. So we had a goal that 80 of those 100 wouldn't go back, and 98 people did not go back over the course of the year because they could come to see us. And so that's not real public. It's not, it's not like ringing the bells. It's not like homeless shelters, but it's making a gigantic impact in the lives of those 100 people that came in over the course of this last 12 months.
That's incredible. That's something I had no knowledge about, and that's one reason I asked the question, because I know that you guys are doing some things that we're not aware of. I have a question. How does someone who is an art history major or an art major at the University of Kansas, which is where I went to school also, how do you become the lieutenant colonel of the Midland Division?
Well, it's one of those things where you admire what your parents do. My mother was in the Salvation Army for about 30 years and really loved what she did and loved helping people. And as a child, you think that's the last thing you want to do is the same thing that your parents do. But this is what the Lord called me to do, and it felt a real distinct leading toward this. And so now, almost 30 years ago, I became a Salvation Army officer. And we are on an appointment system, so the Salvation Army appoints us to where we live. We don't get to choose where we go, and it's an adventure. You end up places you never thought you would end up, and I just enjoy what I'm able to do and able to make an impact in the communities where I live, and work with such incredible, dedicated people who I get to help figure out how they work into their communities as well. The Salvation Army is very local, but also when you think about it on the national scale, there's not a single county in the United States that doesn't have some sort of Salvation Army presence, somebody to help in that community.
And you and your wife have both served together in Upper Michigan and Wisconsin and Chicagoland area. And has she been doing this as long as you have?
She outranks me by about 3 years, so she's ahead of me in this. So she was a Salvation Army officer before, and perhaps that had a little influence as well to become a Salvation Army officer. And as officers of the Salvation Army, both have to be officers. You can be employees and not have your spouse be employed, but as the leaders and the officers, both of you have to be commissioned Salvation Army officers.
Now, Mark, you were the former mayor of the city of Maplewood, and there is a Salvation Army facility in Maplewood there.
There is, and they have been very helpful in after-school programs and just outreach into the community as well. Maplewood, for years, had higher than 50% free and reduced lunch programs at our school district. We've gotten much better over the past few years, but for a long time, Maplewood was a bit of a struggling community, and we had our challenges with some of our citizens, and we've got larger than 50% of our housing stock in Maplewood is apartments. And I don't mean it for it to sound that apartment people aren't well off or anything, but it has been we were for a while very transient, and folks were moving in and out very quickly. And the Salvation Army, to get to your point, has always been there in our community. I know they reach out past the Maplewood borders, but boy, the things that we have seen them do for us here, their doors are always open. They're always there. They've got buses to help move people around. And like I said, the after-school programs have been great. I've known many of the citizens of Maplewood have gone up there and volunteered their time. I know there's a lot of volunteerism up there as well. And the contributions, I think you and I talked about this off the air, Arnold, but the contributions that people make, such a lion's share of that dollar that is given to the Salvation Army goes to help people, which I think is very, very great. I mean, it's great what they've been doing, and what they've done here in this community has been great too.
So Dan, how are you guys?
We're very. Sorry, I cut you off there. I was just going to say we get audited each year, and one of the things that we look at is how much of the dollars that are given local stay in the community to help people. And every year we do exceedingly well. This last year, the audit showed us that about 85% of every dollar we receive stays right in that community where it's raised.
Wow, that's unbelievable. How are you guys assisting with those who are impacted by COVID-19? What kinds of things is the Salvation Army doing? Because I know you're one of those groups that's on the front lines.
Yeah, we've got lots of people who are out of work, especially people who are at low-paying jobs or working in the service industry. Those jobs have just been absolutely decimated by this stay-at-home order. We all hope that they will come back soon, and we hope that people will get back to work. But one of the issues is, as they're off of work, they need to pay their rent, they need to buy medications, they need to have just food to eat. And so we've stepped up our ability to help them, but at the same time, it's transformed the way that we do that. Here's an example. We have food pantries in each of our Salvation Army units where people can come and get food, and we've transformed those over the last 4 or 5 years into what we call client choice pantries. What that means is people come in with a little shopping cart, they go through, they pick the food that they want, so no one's pre-packing and telling you you've got to take those things. All of that now has changed since the virus hit. We can't have people walking through touching all the cans and boxes of food, so we have to have volunteers who are suited up with gloves and masks and everything that they have to have that pack the boxes and have them ready right at the door so that people don't even have to come inside now. It's drive-up service. You drive up, and we put those boxes right in the car, or someone will come to the door and pick those up. So it's a lot more labor-intensive than it is ordinarily. And then in addition to being more labor-intensive, is the volume has increased. So we see 25 to 30 people at each of those spots. Just got a yesterday, one of our spots that is the busiest. They've been as high the last couple of weeks as 150, 170. Yesterday, they topped the 200 family number in numbers of people that were coming to get assistance from the Salvation Army. So more hands-on, more labor-intensive, and the volume is just absolutely out of the sight. 5 or 6, 7 times more than we typically would see in a day are coming in because the need's there.
Now, I want to give their website out. We're not done, but it's stlsalvationarmy.org, stlsalvationarmy.org. And, Dan, how can people help? I know donations are always accepted, but I notice you have a volunteer section here, and I don't know if you're accepting volunteers during this time because it's a little dicey. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm accepting volunteers, but it takes more vetting now to become a volunteer during this outbreak. In fact, to find out more information about it, I'm going to give you another website that has been set up specifically for the Salvation Army during this crisis, and it's salarmymidland.org. So SALARMY Midland.org. We've got information on there about how you can volunteer, how you can give financially, because typically when we have a big run on food and we need to refill our pantries, we just have a food drive. We tell everyone to go out and go shopping, buy some food, go to your personal pantry, find some things you aren't using, and bring it down to the Salvation Army. But again, we just can't do that during these days. Number one, we want people to stay at home if they're able to, not to get out and go shopping or come to the Salvation Army if you don't have to. And number two, we just can't have that many people touching each box or can of food as it goes through many hands. The potential for exposure raises. So the normal channels by which we get food aren't there. So the need for financial support is greater than ever.
When I see organizations like the Salvation Army, and there are many wonderful groups throughout the world and throughout our country in our local area that are serving, but your mission is to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ. And you do that through fighting addictions, through combating poverty, through, working and empowering youth with, providing housing for homeless, for serving vets, in helping in disaster situations with survivors, and helping around the holidays when people don't have hardly anything. And, when I was reading a little bit about the history, and, the East End of London was not the most glamorous place back in the day when he started his mission. And, now it's become a little bit more prominent area. But the mission that you have to be near and to assist people is really speaks to putting the gospel into action.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that mission, you nailed it. It's to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human suffering in his name without discrimination. So even the services that we do, we provide those services and help people in the name of Jesus. That's our call. That's our mission. We believe that we've been well placed to accomplish that throughout the world where we've been placed. People who come in to get help obviously don't have to attend the Salvation Army meeting or go to church or make a confession of faith. We do it because we're called to serve. But there are people who call the Salvation Army their place of worship. We have congregations in many of those locations that meet together, like-minded people who feel called into service and want to be a part of that, and to have serving people as an expression of their faith.
So, folks, if you want to know more, you can check them out on Facebook, the Salvation Army St. Louis, Salvation Army St. Louis, or you can go to salarmymidland.org, salarmymidland.org. Dan, any final comments that you want to, words of encouragement you want to give to us?
Just that we are praying for everyone who is being affected by this. Not only are we serving, rolling up our sleeves, providing food, providing assistance, but we feel compelled just to continue to pray for people. In fact, we'll gather tonight with just a couple of people who are going to broadcast out our Good Friday service to our parishioners and have a special prayer time for those who are suffering through this.
And I'm going to leave that comment with two from your Facebook. Kindness is greater than despair, and hope is greater than fear. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Jennings, thank you very, very much for the show. We appreciate it, and we are encouraged by your mission, and continued best wishes to you and your family.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on and for getting the word out. Oh, yes, happy Easter.